that the Labor Party's first instinct upon being told no by the majority of the Australian people is to pivot and blame it all on misinformation.
With the changing media environment as well, that people can be the subject to misinformation.
What's clear from the campaign, though, is that Peter Dutton is the master of misinformation.
Misinformation and disinformation has become a huge issue in this campaign.
The referendum campaign is fertile ground for disinformation.
The misinformation and disinformation campaign on social media.
A campaign of misinformation.
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 Misinformation. Misinformation and disinformation.
There's so much misinformation.
Campaign of misinformation.
Amount of misinformation and disinformation.
Misinformation and disinformation.
The amount of misinformation.
How do you regulate social media? I think that's something that needs to be looked at into the future.
We seem to have seen now the Labor Party pivot on this and say, all right, well, we lost that one, but we've got this big bad misinformation bill.
A terrifying piece of legislation that seeks to suffocate political debate specifically and prevent citizens from disagreeing with government policy. Like, let's be honest, this is what it's about.
Ultimately, what this boils down to is a ministry of truth.
How do you feel about the ministry of truth?
This is the kind of thing that you see in dictatorships.
And we're seeing the same pattern rolling out across all of the Western world.
The Biden administration is facing fierce backlash for convening a group called the Disinformation Governance Board.
We have just established a Mis and Disinformation Governance Board in the Department of Homeland Security to more effectively combat this threat.
With other countries doing similar but slightly different things.
Passing into law after a vote in the House of Lords of the Online Safety Bill.
And with that vote, the much-debated Bill C-11 passed in the Senate.
What we have with this legislation is a kind of regulatory framework that hands over power to the platform to police and censor our speech.
Justin Trudeau has tried to shut down competition by passing censorship laws that give a powerful central bureaucracy the control over what Canadians see and say.
And I think what we've seen over the last period, particularly the COVID period,
as we have seen with COVID-19,
is this weaponization of the emergency.
Misinformation and disinformation can spread rapidly online.
The Counter COVID Disinformation and Misinformation Initiative.
What you're describing effectively there is a censorship industrial complex.
Digital platforms are being misused to subvert science and spread disinformation and hate to billions of people.
So we call on all social media platforms, tech companies, and news organizations to work with us to prevent and counter harmful information.
This clear and present global threat demands clear and coordinated global action.
Particular emergencies have led to the erosion of civil liberties and freedoms through legislative means. No better example of that than the COVID period. And parliaments seem to be continually lapping them up without any foresight.
Dismiss anything else. We will continue to be your single source of truth.
Who knows what's true sometimes in the middle of these things?
They essentially went to friendly press, spread their propaganda and lies about the Great Barrington Declaration.
And Twitter complied, it looks like, to censor a tweet from a doctor about natural immunity. Guess what? On the same day that doctor's tweet was censored, so were my tweets on natural immunity.
I think a lot of the kind of establishment asked for a bunch of things to be censored that in retrospect ended up being, more debatable or true.
But that's the point of the exercise. The free speech is like the market of ideas. People work out what's not true and what's ridiculous.
How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
And to clamp it down is the most dangerous political step any government could take, and it needs to fail.